This is just a little illustration to kind of what I've just talked about. So up at the top, there will be 3 in the household, 1 in the number in college. At the bottom, let's say mom and dad are divorced or separated. If it's mom that provides more than 50% of the student support, there's 3 in the household, 1 in the number in college. If it's dad, then over here there's a stepsister, so there will be 4 in the number in the household, 1 in the number in college. And then whichever parent files the FAFSA form with the student, that's the parent that gets the dependent form. I always have students say to me, I'm going to turn 18, I'm going to be on my own, I'm going to have my own place, I'm going to have a job, so I want to declare myself independent. Or I have parents say to me, we'd really like to help our student out, but we lost our job last year, we do not have any money for our students, so we want them to be independent. The government does not look at it that way. The government says unless your student meets one of these criteria, they are a dependent student and you do have to list that parental information. It doesn't obligate you to pay for anything, but you do have to include it on the form to be considered for financial aid. So unless the student's 24, veteran, working on a master's degree, orphan ward of the court, deemed homeless, or have dependents other than a spouse. Anything else, you do have to list that parental data. Everybody completes the FAFSA form, and then for first-year freshman students, you do have to complete a state grant form. You get your confirmation page when you click submit on your FAFSA form. Up at the top, there's a link. There's a little orange arrow, and it says optional feature, click here to complete your state grant form. Click on that link. There's about 7 or 8 additional questions that the state asks, and then you actually have to submit that form, but you have to print it. You have to sign that form and mail it into Harrisburg. We do not have an electronic signature process for that form, so you still have to actually manually mail that in. Today, if you complete your FAFSA form, we don't have a printer in here, so there's an option, you can submit it, and then there's an option that says, I'm unable to print it this time, please mail me the form. And they'll actually mail you the form, you sign it, and you mail it back to Harrisburg. So, but just keep in mind that you do have to do the state grant form as well. Lots of deadlines. You're going to meet the earliest one. Obviously, if you complete it today, you're going to meet your deadlines. But the state grant has a May 1st deadline, so I just want to make you aware of that. It's the FAFSA filing date, so it's not necessarily the state grant form. It's actually just the filing for the FAFSA form, which is May 1st if your student's going to a 4-year institution in the fall. Students who are going to 2-year schools, business trade technical schools, community colleges, they have until August 1st to file for the state grant, but next year it reverts back to May 1st. So I just tell everyone the state grant is May 1st, just get the form in. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier because if you wait, you're more likely to forget. Schools have priority filing deadlines. We know, for example, Penn State has a March 1st deadline, for example. So obviously filing today, you're going to meet that deadline, but let's just say that you weren't and you're going to leave here today. If students are applying to 5 different schools, figure out when the priority filing deadlines for each school are, and then line them up, meet the earliest one, and then we'll meet all of them. You can list up to 10 schools on the FAFSA form at the same time, so you'll meet all of those deadlines, and you'll meet the state grant deadline too. You click submit on your FAFSA form, goes through this process called need analysis, happens instantaneously. It generates to you an EFC, an expected family contribution. That's the product of the FAFSA form. If your EFC is less than $5,000 or less, you would receive some form of a Pell Grant. It used to be that would be reasonably what you would be expected to pay out of pocket for your student's education, but it's not necessarily the case anymore, and the reason is the cost of attendance at schools varies so much. So you can go to school for $2,500 a year, or you can go for $50,000 a year. If your EFC is 0, that means you're getting maximum financial aid. If you go to community college, you're not going to have to pay anything out of pocket. You probably aren't even going to have to borrow loans. But if you go to a private institution at $50,000 a year, and you have 0 EFC, you're still going to have to pay something out of pocket. There's just not going to be enough financial aid for you. So like I said, really it's EFC is how the government awards the Pell Grant. This is how it's calculated generally. So there's going to be a student contribution and there's a parent contribution. Most of it comes from the income that you list on the form. There are asset questions. They're not asking for the value of the home that you live in. They don't want to know about life insurance, and they don't want to know about retirement accounts. They want to know about things like if you have investment accounts, CDs, mutual funds, if you have rental properties, if you have a business. Those are the kinds of things that they're looking at for assets. There's an asset protection allowance based on the age of the older parent. So the closer you are to retirement, the more of the assets actually get protected in the formula. So on the FAFSA form, it might say to you, are your parental assets greater than, and it will give you a number, and that's because you've listed, what your income and everything is, but you've also listed the age of that older parent, so there's going to be these protections built in already. So it might say, are your assets greater than $38,000? And then if you say no, you're done. If you say yes, then they ask you to delineate what those are. The parent contribution is about 6% when it's all said and done. Student contribution is 20% of assets, so they do place a higher burden on student assets. Students can work, they can earn up to $6,100, and it doesn't affect their financial aid. Anything over that, they do take half of it toward the student contribution. And then if you have more than one student in college at the same time, the parent contribution gets cut in half. They'll add the parent contribution to the student contribution, and then that will be the EFC number that comes out on the FAFSA form. That EFC number gets sent to every school that you list on the FAFSA form. So if students have applied to 5 schools, they list 5 schools in their FAFSA form, these 5 schools will get that information and they're going to build a possible attendance for the student. So they're going to look at tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, transportation, technology, whatever it costs to go to that school. They'll build that budget, they're going to subtract that EFC number from the budget, and that's going to equal the student's financial need. Based on the financial need, they're going to package the student. So they're going to look at this student with an EFC of 3,000, they're going to say that they're eligible for a Pell Grant, so they're going to put a Pell Grant in their system. They're eligible for state grants, so they'll put a state grant in there. Maybe there's some institutional dollars, their loan eligibility, the Pittsburgh Promise, they'll put that all into their financial aid package. They're going to generate a financial aid award letter to the student. Sometimes they come by paper, more often than not they're coming electronically now. So students are going to have to check their emails end of March, beginning of April to start getting these financial aid award letters. This will list all of the aid that the student qualifies for at the school, along with links to rights and responsibilities, GPA requirements that they have to maintain the financial aid. This is your opportunity to accept or reject anything. So if the student, maybe you're not going to borrow the loans, or maybe you're only going to borrow a portion of the loan, you can let the school know at this point that that's what you want to do with that. They'll cancel that unused portion. If you don't understand anything, you need to ask the school. So maybe there's a scholarship listed on there. Do they have to reapply for that every year that they're in school? Is it a one and done thing? Is it just automatically renewed for every year they're in school? What if they have to go for a 5th year? Is that renewable, or do they have to reapply, or is it gone? So if there are any questions on those award letters, if you're not understanding what they're offering to you, you need to contact the school at that point and ask those questions. We're going to talk about the specific types of financial aid that you can qualify for based on your application, based on the FAFSA form. Go through the federal programs first. The first one is the Pell Grant. Pell is a grant. You don't have to pay that back if you qualify for it. 5645 is the maximum for next year. So it went up a little bit. It was 5550 this year, so it went up a little bit for next year. We just found that out. Again, if you receive that, you don't have to pay it back. There are campus-based federal programs. These are monies that the government gives to the school to parcel out to students. So they'll determine who gets what of these pools of money. FSEOG, Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, is a grant. You don't have to pay that back if you qualify for it. You can get up to $4,000 per year in this grant, but most schools do not award $4,000. They only award $1,000, maybe $1,200. They have very limited funding, so they want to give it to the neediest students, and they want to spread it around as much as they can. Perkins Loan. Perkins Loan is a loan program. Students do have to pay that back if they qualify for it. It's the best student loan program, so if you do qualify for Perkins and your student was going to borrow, this is the one you want to take first. Perkins Loan is subsidized, meaning that no interest accrues on this loan while the student's in school. They get a 9-month subsidized grace period before they go into repayment, and then it's a 5% fixed interest rate for the life of the loan. So it's a pretty good loan. If they have to borrow, like I said, this is the one you want to take first. Up to $5,500, most schools get $1,000, maybe $2,000 in this program. Federal Work Study is an opportunity for a student to get a job on campus if they choose to work. This money does not come off the bill, but you will see it on the award letter. So it might say Federal Work Study $1,800 or Federal Work Study $2,400, and that means that they can earn up to that amount. They get a job on campus, 8 to 15 hours per week, minimum wage, sometimes a little bit more, and then they get a bi-weekly paycheck. So they can use it for books, or they can use it for pizza. Doesn't matter, it's their money.